There's a special kind of acid that burns in your gut when you see a truly awful person living a beautiful life. For me, that person was Julian. He wasn't my ex, he was my best friend Alex's. Julian had hollowed Alex out from the inside, leaving him a shell of the person he used to be, and then just walked away into a life of sunshine and promotions. I'd watch from a distance, seeing his smug updates about his corner office and his perfect new life, and I'd feel that acid churn. He had done so much damage, yet he carried no scars, no guilt, only success. The worst part was his paranoia. Anytime a bird pooped on his car or his internet went out, he would fire off a furious message to Alex accusing him of sabotage. It was twisted. Alex just wanted to be left alone to heal, but Julian wouldn't even give him that. One day, feeling particularly powerless, I did something small. I found a website that signs you up for hundreds of magazine subscriptions and charity newsletters, and plugged in Julian's information. It was childish, a digital prank, but a few days later my phone rang. It was Alex, his voice tight with anxiety. Julian had been blowing up his phone for 2 days straight, convinced Alex was behind the flood of junk mail, threatening to get lawyers involved for harassment. Hearing the panic in my friend's voice, I felt like a fool. My pathetic attempt at justice had only brought the monster back to Alex's door. I promised him I'd stop, that I wouldn't do anything ever again, and I meant it. I had to let it go. Years passed. I focused on my own life, built my own career in software development, and Alex finally began to heal. I had almost forgotten the burning need for payback. Then I found myself at a huge tech conference in a city hundreds of miles from home. I was there to network, to scout new talent for my company, and across the polished hall I saw him, Julian. He was older, sleeker, standing at a podium, the keynote speaker. He was the golden boy of some massive corporation, charming a room full of industry titans. As he spoke, something inside me went cold and still. All that old anger was gone, replaced by a quiet, calculating calm. This was a different battlefield, and I had different weapons now. After his speech, I saw him holding court with a group of executives, including a silver-haired man I recognized as the chief operating officer of his company. I waited, I watched. When the group began to break up, I made my way over to the older man, extending my hand with a warm, professional smile. I introduced myself, my company, and we chatted for a moment about market trends. Then I lowered my voice just a little, a conspiratorial gesture between two professionals. I told him I was impressed by his keynote speaker, Julian. I mentioned that I knew him from way back, from a small startup we were both involved in. I paused, letting a look of thoughtful concern cross my face. I said Julian was brilliant, absolutely brilliant, but that the startup had ended under very stressful, very chaotic circumstances. I chose my words like a surgeon chooses his scalpels. I never lied. I just said I always worried about how Julian handled extreme pressure when things didn't go his way, and that I hoped his new position offered him the stability he needed to truly thrive. I framed it as genuine concern from an old acquaintance. The man's friendly smile tightened just a fraction. He thanked me for the insight, his eyes distant. He shook my hand again, but this time it was a dismissal. I walked away and never looked back. I didn't need to. About 6 months later, I met Alex for coffee. He was thriving, truly happy, talking about a new relationship and a promotion of his own. Casually, he mentioned he'd heard a wild rumor through a mutual acquaintance. He said, "You'll never guess, but apparently Julian had some kind of massive flameout at his job. They were grooming him for a huge international project, and then suddenly they pulled the plug, moved him to some dead-end internal review department. Word is he cracked under the pressure and became so paranoid about his team sabotaging him that he alienated everyone." "Isn't that ironic?" Alex laughed, a real deep laugh I hadn't heard in years. "All that time he spent accusing me of trying to ruin his life," he said, shaking his head. "And in the end, the one time something real happened, he had no one to point his finger at but himself." I just sipped my coffee and smiled. He was right. The best revenge wasn't a flood of junk mail or a dramatic confrontation. It was a few carefully chosen words, a single seed of doubt planted in the right soil that allowed a man like Julian to become the architect of his own destruction. He never saw it coming, and Alex was finally completely free.